Hey everyone, it's Quickie Baby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and I've got something very exciting for you today. It's another Tier 8 Soviet premium heavy tank. Oh wait, it's not. Wow, that actually makes a change. Yeah, it's a Tier 7 American premium medium tank. It is the T-26E3. This is like a baby Pershing which sits in at Tier 7, and it's going to be released around Gamescom because this thing kind of took part in a very famous engagement around Cologne Cathedral. Firstly, I'm going to let you know everything there is to know about the T-26E3 and how it stacks up compared to some of its competition, and then give it a trial by combat on the battlefield with some multiple helpings of Ace Tanker gameplay. So let's get started. So this vehicle is also being marketed as the Eagle 7. So let's compare it to the standard Tier 7 American medium tank, the T-20, and the British Tier 7 medium tank, one of my favorites, the Comet. Immediately we notice that the Eagle 7, it doesn't have the best damage per minute, but it's still better than the abysmal DPM of the T-20, and it pales in comparison compared to the Comet. However, penetration is something that this vehicle does well. 172 on its standard rounds compared to the 160, which is decent for the T-20, and the rather low 140 on the Comet. And that's because this thing packs a 90mm main armament. That's kind of more of a Tier 8 medium tank gun down at Tier 7. And with 240 alpha damage, it hits harder than most other Tier 7 medium vehicles. One thing to mention though, if you decide to fire premium rounds on this vehicle, you don't get APCR as standard, and you only have 207mm of penetration, which is awful compared to the 243 godlike APCR rounds on the T-20. On the other hand, this thing carries a whopping amount of ammunition at 70 rounds, way more than the T-20 and the Comet, and this will allow you to choose different ammo types for the situation. Unlike what the Comet and the T-20 can, and they really start to run low of either AP or APCR towards the end of the battle. Gun handling wise, it's pretty good news for the Eagle. 2.3 seconds of aim time, the same as the other two vehicles. 0.39 accuracy, definitely not the best, but that's only slightly worse than the T-20. But it has really good dispersion values when it's moving, better than the T-20 and the Comet, so it should be fairly accurate on the move. But its turret traverse, 0.12, neither good nor bad, the same as the T-20 and the Comet, and you're definitely going to want to use vertical stabilizers on this vehicle to try and really crunch that down as much as possible. Gun depression wise, again, great news for the Eagle 7, a lot like the T-20, 10 degrees and just a little bit worse than the Comet. Now onto mobility, and that's where this vehicle kind of falls down a little bit. It is a heavy tank, nearly 40 tons, weighing 9 tons more than the T-20 and 7 tons more than the Comet. But it has a worse engine at 500 horsepower, which gives this tank a really bad power to weight ratio of under 13, with fairly poor ground resistances as well that are worse than the other two tanks. So this keeps this tank limited to more like about 30 to 35 along rough terrain, even when driving straight, and you're not going to get up to that 48 kilometers an hour top speed limit unless you're driving on hard over long distances or you're going downhill. However, with great weight usually comes great armor, and considering this is a baby Pershing, yeah, it's pretty good news for the Eagle 7. 101 on the front of the hull and 101 on the front of the turret, way better than the T-20 and the Comet. And its side armor is also very impressive as well, which will allow you to side scrape against anything in the game. Add to this a nice hit point total of 1,200, and you've got a fairly durable Tier 7 medium tank. Kind of feels more like Tier 7.5 durability in my opinion, but Tier 7.5 for a medium tank, I would just like to clarify that. Unfortunately, TanksGG doesn't have an armor model, and so it's tricky to be able to find out whether this vehicle has a nice gun mantlet. But when we consider that this vehicle is basically a baby Pershing, it's safe to say that this thing most likely has an identical hull, but I'm thinking that the Pershing probably has a little bit better turret armor than this vehicle, as you would expect for a tank that's up at Tier 8. In addition to this, the vehicle has a decent view range at 380, slightly worse than the T-20, something to take into consideration, and you definitely want to use coated optics on this vehicle. And it does have a high chance to be set on fire, like all of these other vehicles, and so be careful if you want to do away with a fire extinguisher and live dangerously. But what's more exciting about the Eagle 7 is probably the history behind the vehicle. These were effectively an early version of the Pershing, and 310 were produced before victory in Europe. However, of these 300, only 20 saw combat, the ones that arrived in January, and the Eagle 7 took part in one of the most documented and visceral tank combats from World War II, where Sergeant Bob Early took the vehicle through the streets of Cologne, participating in Operation Zebra. And during the Battle for Cologne on May the 6th, 1945, Sergeant Early's T-26E3 engaged, harassed and chased down a Panther tank, eventually effectively ammo-racking it. And the History Channel does have a video that I believe you can find on YouTube showing the fight, but it's really not for the faint-hearted, and really hits home the realities of the game that we play. But anyway, on with the show. Let's see how Eagle 7 performs on the battlefield. So firstly, I'm going to show you Eagle 7 in the Dream matchup, and I think this is relevant for the vehicle because you're playing a Pershing at tier 7. You're losing a lot of the combat capacity of the tank and also its kind of well-rounded nature, but you're getting really good armor at tier 7. And of course, you're going to want to use that against tier 5 vehicles. Now, whether or not you're going to be shooting tier 5 vehicles all the time because of the matchmaking, it is down to, I guess, luck of the draw, and it's not always going to be the case, right? And that's why I'm going to be following this up with some gameplay, showing you how it will deal with the worst possible matchmaking as well. Alright, so the streets of Paris, not the streets of Cologne for the Eagle 7 here, but it looks like that M7 has already made a very bad mistake. Now, check out the gun handling on this vehicle. Again, it's not incredible, but it's not terrible. I do feel in these kind of short to mid-range engagements, and what's going on with that tier 1 heavy behind me? Alright, he went blue. Wow, look at that chat. Welcome to World of Tanks, ladies and gents. Anyway, you know what? I'm going to focus on that. I'm just going to focus on trying to win the game. And right now, in the kind of the short to mid-range engagements that you find yourself in the streets of Paris, I feel like the Eagle 7 does very well. Remember, it doesn't have the best gun dispersion, doesn't have the best dispersion values when you're turning the tank, when you're moving the turret, and it doesn't have the best aim time as well. But when you get vertical stabilizers on this vehicle at tier 7, that's not a novelty. You can do that on the T20 and the Comet as well. And of course, if you use a good crew that hopefully you've got in your M48A1 Patton, or maybe some kind of American medium tank, maybe even the M4 if you like playing at low tiers and you want to pick one of these up, then your crew will be exceptional and it will definitely help out. Alright, so I've decided to push the tempo because I thought, why not? I've got some armor and I'm dealing with some tier 5 and tier 6 tanks. Now if I'm playing a Pershing, I don't really ever use my armor on that vehicle because you're more often than not having to deal with tier 8s, quite often tier 9s, and in a bad scenario, tier 10s. However, to have kind of like that Pershing armor down at tier 7, and while you don't have the great rate of fire, well, definitely the better rate of fire that you'd have on the Pershing and the superior penetration, this vehicle just feels like it's taking hits right now. Look at these high explosive rounds we're absorbing from the M4. I'm not sure if that hit our gun. We also took a high explosive round as well from the OI experimental. And this thing just feels very resilient in a scenario like this, with 100mm of frontal hull armor, which really doesn't work at tier 8. It's actually working very well in this case on Paris against tier 5 and tier 6 tanks. Alright, bad shot there by me on the M4, just managed to wiggle out the way, and this sneaky French lad just showed himself, but a bit of a mistake there. And look what this tank does when it hits tier 5s. They're just losing all of their hit points right now. This alpha damage, I mean, it's not that impressive these days, because Wargaming seems to be throwing in 240 alpha damage willy-nilly at tier 6. The Italian tier 6 medium tank, one of my favorites, has it. And also, I believe that the Polish tier 6 is going to have high alpha damage as well. I think it's going to be 240. So I guess it's not really that special to have that at tier 7. But it's definitely a lot more special than having the 140 alpha damage that you have on the Comet, for example. Now, of course, the Comet is firing pretty much twice for every time the Eagle 7 is firing. But, you know, when you don't fire quite so often, you have more time to advance and be accurate and still be fully aimed at your target. And that is a nice thing to have with alpha. And also, you can trade better. And considering you're at tier 7, it's more often than not that your enemies have actually got quite low alpha damage, and so trading can be very effective with this 90mm. Alright, now get an idea of the mobility of this vehicle. You can see that we were pretty slow up that slope. Now, the mobility of the tank isn't horrific, but it's definitely not great. The OI shoots, this time it looks like another HE round, or is that an AP round? No, if it would have been an AP round, it would have shown as a ricochet up in the top corner of the screen, so that must have been HE just bouncing off the gun or something. And he gets finished off by our artillery. Good hit in there, and in the just over 4 minutes of this game, we're up to quite a nice total here. 2,600 damage and 1,100 spotting. And oh dear, GW Panther. Oh, that is painful. We took, what, 233? Actually not too bad. I guess a lot of that got absorbed into our tracks. We managed to finish off one artillery. And we got a 50-50 whether we're going to kill the next artillery. But actually, I'm loading a high explosive round here. Not sure if that's a mistake. We'll have to find out. Do we get our justice? Yes, we do. Second artillery killed. But it kills my driver again. Now, keep that in mind, that This is a slow tank that is going to be moving incredibly slow right now. And I have to admit, at this stage of the game, I'm thinking more about being a little bit greedy. I'm thinking more about just pressing on because I felt like I had the advantage at the time against 2 tier 7 tanks. In retrospect, I should have been probably a little bit less cheeky here. And look, that Jagdpanther uses the bush well to be able to get out. Comes around the corner, puts one into me with 105mm. I try and get over, but unfortunately, it looks like that little chaffy behind me stops me from side scraping. All right, the Jagdpanther fires, so I come around the corner, hoping... I don't expect the Jagdpanther to come round again now. And the Jagdpanther actually surprises me by coming round. I put one round into them, and now the Jagdpanther decides they want to take me out and somehow manages to still hit my vehicle. I was not expecting that because I was thinking that maybe this was going to protect my vehicle. I'm not sure if shells even go through this or not. Maybe they don't even count as a hitbox. Either way, Jagdpanther shuts me down at the end of the game. But fortunately, even though I kind of threw a little bit at the end here and I kind of deserved to lose, and the Jagdpanther and the Leo should have been able to take this one down, my team managed to cap out and the Jagdpanther doesn't manage to get around the corner in time.
Let's go.
Alright, then next up, the worst possible matchup. Meeting tier 9 vehicles. Now, if you were in a Pershing at tier 8, this would be a pretty good matchup, really. But no, not for the Eagle 7. This is as bad as it gets for the tank. We've got artillery. We've got those tier 9 tanks. But then again, when I feel as if I've got a 90mm gun, I've got kind of all the flexibility that I need in a medium tank, this thing feels fairly decent. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be better than a T20 in a matchup like this. I would far rather be playing a T20. If I was playing the T20, I know I would dab that 2 key to stand a good chance of going through the lower plate of the 257, for example, whereas I know if I meet that tank with this vehicle, doesn't matter how many gold shells that I load, I'm not going to be contesting the front of that tank. Same with the 50 TP as well. And even things like the Centurion, if it gets into a hold down location, or shall I say, maybe hides its lower plate but uses its upper hull armor at a well-angled surface, I'm still going to be kind of bouncing off them, especially if that was the Centurion 5-1 model, right? Or the Centurion 7-1, even at tier 9. Anyway, what I want you to focus on right now is just how slow the Eagle 7 is. It doesn't get anywhere quickly, which is a little bit alarming for a medium tank. Remember what I said about that engine power really holding it back. All of these vehicles are already up on the hill. They've taken their positions. The Lorraine is fighting it out. Looks like the Lorraine's nearly killed the Skoda, but the Skoda manages to put enough rounds into the Skoda to be able to get the... the Skoda puts enough rounds into the Lorraine to be able to finish him off and get a little bit of support from the P43, which is the tier 7 Italian medium tank there. Alright, so I'm going to continue to press up. I can't get held there. If I get held there, it's going to be a nightmare scenario for the Eagle 7. So again, trundling forwards, look at the speed, 25. It's not a medium tank, right? It's classified as a medium, but it definitely handles more like a heavy. And so take that into account, especially to think about how magical those tier 5 matchups. And downslope, it's okay. It's a bit kind of like a Super Pershing. Now, I counted the shells against the Skoda T50, and this is just perfect, right? This is a tier 7 medium tank taking on a tier 9 medium tank that was caught reloading. GG. That was absolutely flawless, and that's going to be a huge impact for our team. Now, the Centurion is very much focused on shooting at the Object 430, as he quite rightly should be. So I put another round into the Centurion, and having 240 alpha damage here feels really nice. Now the P43 Ter actually turns and puts one into my hull armor, which I didn't like very much, and right now it's trying to micromanage who can I shoot for free. So you see now I align my tracks and actually go along the wall here, and what that means is that I can avoid getting shot by the P43 and still engage the Centurion. And because the P43 went after me and the Centurion bounces, that means that the 430 comes around the corner and obliterates him, and I put another round into a Centurion. Now this vehicle, it's not killing anything quickly. If I was in the Comet, I would be kind of trying to push the tempo and trying to put out that 2100 DPM. But it's not terrible. It's not like a T20, for example, and the DPM is just slightly higher than that of a Lerva or a T34, so you can make it work. Alright, so Eagle, worst possible matchup, and this is where you want to find yourself, harassing those higher tiered medium tanks playing the support role. We enabled our 430 to dominate the hill. And now that the 430 has dominated the hill, we can try and play a support role at shooting the vehicles that are down below us, and getting to shoot into the back or the side of a T-30 is just an absolute treat right now. Now I managed to spot the T-30 with my fairly okay view range here, but I'm going to ignore the... No, I'm actually going to focus on the T-30 and right into the side of that weak Tier 9 tank destroyer armor. And the Scorpion actually appears as well. I'm thinking, who should I shoot right now? I can't pen the Oni with a standard round because of the mediocre penetration of this tank. I'm going to load a premium round now for the Oni, but the Oni disappears, and so we're unable to get the Oni. So I'm going to go for the T-30 again. However, not going to be able to hit the T-30 from this angle. I need the T-30 to pull forwards, and yeah, beautiful, beautiful. 2,300 damage dealt in the first 4 minutes of this game. Oh, well, talk about that. That's just the icing on the cake. Make that 2,600 damage dealt. Most of that against higher tiered tanks. Now, the Eagle, definitely not going to be great going up a hill, but down a hill it's pretty okay. So I'm going to slip my way over this slope to hopefully try and catch the artillery or the Centurion. And once you've got some momentum up, this vehicle's not terribly slow. Think of it a lot like a Super Pershing. But look at the speed dipping now. Look at the speed dipping right here. Well, I can't put my hand over that far. Dang, got to get a bigger green screen. But, you know, over there, down to 47 along the flat. Not great, not terrible. This was exactly what I suggested in my stats review at the start. Oh no, a low roll. Well, an average roll against the Centurion, not a high roll. And so he's left on 4 hit points. It looks like the Centurion might be ammo-racked. Oh, fluffed the shot like a donkey. All right, got to try and wiggle, And that Centurion is definitely ammo-racked because it took a long time to reload there. And we put in 3 for the second shell the Centurion fires. Nevertheless, taking the Centurion out of the game, and it's over. And yeah, Pretty Baby decides to turn the tank to get a nice screenshot. Maybe this will be my thumbnail, maybe it won't. I'll have to decide. So that's it, the T26E3. I have to admit, did you find this replay interesting? The way that I played this one against the higher tiered vehicles? Because I quite often see those kind of YouTube comments, oh, he's just playing as mid-tier or top tier again. What you have to understand is that when you're playing against high-tier tanks, it's usually not incredibly exciting, at least for me. You're not picking up a flashy amount of kills, a flashy amount of damage. Your armor isn't going to work so consistently, and really it's all about just putting yourself in a good position where you can still make the disadvantages of your tank still shine, or specifically helping your higher-tiered tanks to cut through the higher-tiered vehicles on the enemy team. So our first round in Paris, Ace Tanker Pascucci's medal for taking down the self-propelled guns, and a high caliber for the 3,200 damage dealt, 1,273 base for our 4 kills, and 80,000 credits profit because we didn't fire any premium rounds. Yes, that's right. This thing doesn't quite make as much as a tier 8 premium tank would. That's still very healthy. Next up on Himmelsdorf, we get a Levislaio's medal for destroying 2 enemy vehicles which were higher tier than us, a tank sniper for dealing most of that damage at long range. We were top on damage in our worst possible matchup, and a decent amount of experience to boot for our 3 kills. And while we did fire a couple of premium rounds here, 56,000 credits profit with a premium account, 33,000 credits profit without a premium account. Not bad for the worst possible matchup. And so the T26E3 Eagle should be out in the store today. I'm recording this video just before I'm about to go to Gamescom, where I'm going to be streaming every day. Well, not quite every day. Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I have some amazing prizes to give out, including some bonus codes that will definitely be worth your time. And I'm going to be playing a variety of rare tanks, including this one, so you can come along and see what you think about the vehicle. But what do I think about it in a nutshell before I have a chance to test it out some more on my personal account? Well, I think it's just a toned down Pershing at tier 7. It's quite slow. Its gun is decent for a tier 7 vehicle. But I feel the tank really shines when it is in these tasty matchups, because that 101mm of frontal hull armor, and it feels like it's got a decent amount of spacing over the mantlet as well, is very nice. And I would far rather play this tank in a good matchup than play something like the Pershing in a good matchup, for example. Because this tank's armor will perform way better against tier 5s than its bigger brother will do against tier 6s. But do keep in mind that you are losing a lot of speed to be able to gain this. And you're also losing a lot of the combat capacity, or shall I say, a lot of the attributes that a high-skilled player would love to have in the T20 to gain the benefits of premium status and some armor. But anyway, that's it for today, ladies and gents. I really hope you enjoyed this review. Maybe it was just useful for you. If it was, please give it a thumbs up. But if you absolutely hated it, you know what to do, give it a thumbs down. And I'm really looking forward to seeing as many of as possible throughout my week at Gamescom, where I've got some exclusives for you. Really, I can't tell you right now what they're going to be, or maybe I have. Tune into my social media. Maybe I've already told you. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.